5. No, 4. You're 5.
Okay.
So I gotta turn 4 up. Oh man, Miss Justin. Welcome to the Rewatchers on the Pod. This is your host, Tyler, and his co-host, Tyler.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You've stumbled into one of our infamous Oops All Tyler episodes that people have come to love and fear for good reason. So this is a weird one just because, these are weird times we live in. People moving across the world, people maybe getting sick, and so we're the only two left. We're the only ones left alive from the podcast. It was nice knowing you.
One of their corpses is here with us. They died during setup. We're not going to tell you which one.
You can figure it out. I don't know how.
Just listen to the past 3 episodes and you'll be able to put the pieces together.
So we were going to talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey this week, but Gwen chose it, and it didn't feel right to have her choose a thing and then not be here to be able to talk about it. So we're going to delay that episode for a week, and next week we will talk about 2001. Maybe. We'll see. Well, we're just riding the wave. We're super chill here.
Figure it out.
We're so cool about stuff that we just do whatever comes our way. So, but this week, we decided that we just talk about weird stuff.
Since it's a weird episode, we're just going to talk about things that are weird.
Yeah.
With 2 weird guys.
Yeah. These are probably like the things that we could talk about, but maybe other people wouldn't want to. So. But let's start easy. Let's start with something that we have already talked about. We're just going to talk about a little bit more for kicks and giggles. And we're just going to talk about this shit for a while, and then it'll end. And you won't know when that's coming, and neither will we, I guess. It'll be like the second coming. You could be anywhere.
Yeah, I was about to say you have to feel it out. And then, yeah, I think that still applies to the second coming. You just have to feel it out.
You'll know it when you...
You'll know when to look busy.
All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is part 8 of Twin Peaks: The Return, which, again, we've already kind of talked about, but we thought it'd be good to, kind of when we were talking about Twin Peaks, a lot of those episodes we were watching the night of, like directly before we were recording. And so then we're coming into it and just like immediately giving thoughts and everything. And for most people, that was their first time through that. So I guess, Tyler, what did you rewatched part 8 last night, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was only my second time seeing it.
Sure.
I mean, and when we talk about weird, what do we talk about when we talk about weird? We talk about Twin Peaks and David Lynch, which I was actually thinking about starting some David Lynch movies I haven't seen yet, and I wanted to get your recommendation on which ones are like the needs. But yeah, I the first time through The Return, it was a weird experience just to have expectations and then David Lynch be like, I don't give a fuck about these. Yeah. And, but I think at the time and probably still is part 8 is probably my favorite episode. And I think I said this last time when we talked about the first time is, it can kind of stand alone as its own kind of short film. Like there's a few things that like probably only like 2 small, like 5-second things. If you just cut them out, you could show this at like a film festival and be like, this is its own thing, and no one would know the difference, right?
You'd basically just start with the 9 Inch Nails playing in a just random place, and they go right into
I mean, I think you could even include that first part,
I
like
agree, yeah.
just
you mean
like
with
the no context, like maybe a couple lines you can maybe change, but like just having that like mystery. It is a very David Lynch thing to be like, I don't care about explaining the context of this.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you? But yeah, I don't know. It's still hard even after I've seen it a second time. I felt this kind of way I mean, my one critique of David Lynch, I feel like that I have that I don't necessarily jive with is, and then I'm going to mention this probably on 2001 as well, because Kubrick had the same issue. I feel like is pacing, because David Lynch does a really good job of letting scenes breathe, which nobody does anymore, which is refreshing. However, I feel like he lets every scene breathe, in my opinion, which personally I would like some more variety. I would like let the scenes, because then those scenes that do lose their power, in my opinion. So with that being said, that's what was like the most jarring for me watching The Return the first time, because he really does it more so than in the first two seasons.
You're not working towards a commercial break. You're not. It's just fucking straight up hour. Do whatever you want.
And I think since I knew that coming in this time, I enjoyed it more this time, actually, because I was kind of expecting that. It wasn't like a first time viewing where you're trying to absorb all the information and you're ready. Like you're trying to like, first time you watch something, movies, especially now, move so quickly that you're like, have a, I don't know, a way you watch things to try and absorb, make sure you don't miss anything on your first viewing. And so you're going in with that sort of viewing mindset, and you are just still in the same spot. You know, it's like, you're like, oh, okay. Oh, we're still here. Okay. And so this time, expecting that, I was able to, and knowing a little bit more after talking over and knowing the ending and everything, was able to get a little bit better grasp on just each individual scene this time, and it was a lot more enjoyable for some reason. I don't know.
It's such a fascinating piece of. I do wonder, like, what people, if you did, present it like you're talking about, is just a thing completely separate from Twin Peaks, and like, to someone who'd never seen Twin Peaks, like what they would think it was. But yeah, it's such a, I feel like for a long time, like I've watched it probably like probably like 5 or 6 times, I would guess, this episode. But like there are times when I still forget that there is stuff with Cooper at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it feels so weird to just like, just sitting down for another episode of Twin Peaks. Gonna find out what happened after they get out of prison. Holy shit! Like Dark Cooper is dead. Oh, he isn't dead. Oh, the 9 Inch Nails are here. And then fucking atom bomb. Like, jeez.
That's what I love about this episode. Is like, I mean, there's just the choice of the 9 Inch Nails is a phenomenal choice for this episode, and then usually the Roadhouse scenes are at the end of the episode in The Return, so it's like having it kind of at the beginning is, it's so good.
It's almost like he's ending the episode that early, and he's like, oh, by the way,
those who came for Twin Peaks can get off here.
I will say this episode, like, this happens a lot in The Return, just because of, like, I mean, obviously there have been, we talked about it plenty, there are plenty of people who have passed away or died, and like sometimes in The Return, like David Lynch chooses to have them in it just by using like a still image of them. Like you get Briggs with just his floating head through space, and like in this you get Bob's face in that larval egg from the experiment or whatever. And that stuff, it's so funny because it, like, I feel like that is, it feels kind of cheap and weird and out of place, but also it's kind of like this just blunt force instrument to be like, this is who, like, you know exactly what I'm going for if I show you this, because I've created like this iconography around it. And that stuff is so cool. But then I will say just kind of the beginning of this episode, talking about like editing and stuff like that, that whole sequence at the beginning with the bomb and with I just forgot the name of the song, but the Penderecki piece that he uses.
Oh, Threnody.
Threnody for Victims of Hiroshima or whatever. That is so great. Like, just the way that explosion is represented, and like this, and that is like this genesis for like other, all this other evil stuff or stuff you don't understand. Like, is just, I think it's so rad.
Yeah. Well, I think let's talk production, I guess, first.
Yeah.
And then kind of go more like the significance story wise, maybe, or whatever. Because this does a lot of interesting things that, I mean, obviously we had, like we just discussed, like the cheap Bob special effects, but like, which is rampant throughout The Return.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about previously on the Twin Peaks episodes of David Lynch's most likely conscious choice of like not really caring so much about the look of the special effects, more so getting the message across.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the rest of the episode has some really kind of amazing stuff in it that is really visually stunning and polarizing, and definitely not for everyone. Like it's something that, I don't know, this works so well together with obviously the score, the sound design, which David Lynch was a big part of, I believe, and the just these weird effects to illustrate very ethereal concepts. Because I think that's part of it too. I mean, I want to go into like more lore stuff in this next part of the conversation, but like even like at some point you do have to like ground it in something tangible. With like the fireman and what is her name? Senorita Dido or something like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Even though her name's never spoken.
Yeah, in the credits you get.
Yeah.
Which is also a funny thing. Like that was the thing watching The Return is like you learn more solid information from the credits of the Twin Peaks sometimes than you do from the actual episode, which I really love.
But there's like a sequence that you told me about where before I'd even seen it, we had watched a clip from it before. And it's just like this weird static that was created by nails. Oh, like lighting nails a certain way. What were the nails in? Were they like in like a tumbler or something? Or
I don't know, honestly. I don't know how exactly they captured that, if it was like that, because it is. I don't even know. I wonder like if at some point that's just looped too, you know what I mean? Like what's happening with if they're just capturing like 3 seconds of footage, but then like looping that and like distorting it and all of that stuff. I don't know, but yeah, it's that to me is like such a. I love when film does that because that even knowing that that's nails, like that evokes this very like weird response from me, like a very visceral response from me, and like it gives me kind of an anxiety and like is like raising my heart rate for some reason. And it's like it's just because it's taking this thing that's familiar and like showing me it in a way that I've never seen it before and never want to see it in real life. Like if I ever saw those nails moving like that in real life, I would just like jump into a hole. I don't know. I'm not good in high pressure situations.
What is the most high pressure situation than seeing a bunch of nails?
It's the Twin Peaks nails. Run.
Yeah, and then he transitions from like something like using more practical effects to like a very digitized like cloud of, well, all this is happening because we're zooming into the nuclear explosion, and that's kind of what his representation of, I don't know if it's on a molecular level of what's happening or more of like on a like ethereal level, what is happening in the universe because of this.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it's represented by these like crazy visuals done with some practical effects. Then it goes into like this crazy cloud and the galaxies. Then do we go to the gas station, the convenience store?
Yeah,
is that where it goes next?
I think so.
And then there's some, this episode probably should have had a seizure warning that I get on all my video games because of the sequence. Like there's a lot of, I think it's both slow motion and dropped frames.
Yeah.
Like it's like they just took out a bunch of frames because it's still the same technically speed, but I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's like, but then it's also jump cutting back and forth.
Yeah.
To create this really actually cool effect that looks, I assume what he was kind of going for was like the old school black and white films, like early film. to try and achieve kind of that same look that a lot of those had, because it looks very similar to, I can't remember what that fucking French film is called where they go to the moon. You know what I'm talking about?
Is it just called To the Moon?
It might be just To the Moon. Where they shoot it with a bullet.
Yeah. Georges Méliès. I know that's the guy's name. Hugo Man, as I like to call him.
But just that low frame rate of like those where they're like all moving, all jittery and shit. Like that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Which then, I mean, the rest of that episode kind of transitions to this like very beautiful, like black and white photography. I mean, all the stuff that takes place kind of towards the end in the radio station and like the diner, like those shots are so, I think those shots are just so gorgeous and like obviously constructed for like black and white and like very violent also like towards the end. Oh man, I always forget also when I'm watching this, just the slow motion of that woman screaming in the car. It's like so good.
Yeah. I feel like, a lot of Twin Peaks 1 and 2 had all, I mean, I was talking with Katie about this day. Twin Peaks is a alarmingly dark show.
Yeah.
Like anything involving, there's other things in the town that are very dark, but especially anything involving the Palmer family is extremely dark and heavy. It's weird that a show that explores those subject matters is also so lighthearted, and there's a lot of levity and a lot of moments that is not as present in season 3, even though there definitely is stuff. Like the Mitchum brothers is fantastic. But like
that sex scene is fucking hilarious. I watch it.
Yeah, so like it's still definitely present in The Return, but The Return has this sort of darker tone. And this episode especially doesn't have as much, but I feel like that's an intentionally goofy choice to make her sound like a monster.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird because it's also kind of mirrored. I can't remember if it's an episode. I believe it's an episode after this. When Bobby is at the diner and then he goes out and there's just that woman in her car that's like, "We're gonna be late." And her kid's like vomiting shit in the passenger seat. And Bobby's like,
"Oh yeah, I forgot about that."
We're gonna be late.
That I thought was gonna have some sort of plot significance, but it didn't at all.
But yeah. Anyways, but I think also like the mantra that kind of occurs at the end of this when the woodsman gets into the radio station and him just repeating that like poetry over and over, that too is like such a haunting. I just remember like the first time I watched this, I was living at my parents' house and I was in the basement watching this. It was very late, like it was like probably like 12 or 1 in the morning or something. And I just remember when this episode ended, I like didn't want to move. I wasn't like, I don't know why I'm so like afraid right now, but like I am just horrified that if I move, it will end. Like not the show, like me. Like my existence will come to a screeching halt. But man, yeah, and so much of that is just in that like that repetition and the way that like that line is delivered and like all of his movements around everywhere are shot. Like he just moves so slowly and like it's, oh man.
Oh, that's just that sound design of like the skull crushing in his hands the whole time. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess kind of transitioning into like lore and story-wise significance of this, is there a clear answer on, because we discussed it a lot on the podcast before, of the meaning of the mantra and also kind of like, because I mean, I gather that the woodsmen are, that's what they're called, right? The woodsmen are like servants of the Black Lodge.
Sure, yeah. I think that I think that's for sure. That's how I think of them. They're always there to help Cooper and Bob whenever they're, in a tight situation or whatever.
Yeah, so it's like, but it also makes people fall asleep which seems to be though that it's directed at the girl who is confirmed to be Sarah Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is the other thing about like Twin Peaks.
At least according to the fan wiki that I read last night.
Yeah, well, because Well, and most of that is from the like Secret History of Twin Peaks. I think it's that one, or the Final Dossier has like Sarah Palmer's birthday and like the date in the episode. They're like she could be around this age, and I can't remember if it's.
Oh, I thought what I read last night was that like David Lynch actually, or Mark Frost.
Yeah,
Mark Frost actually said that.
I mean, David Lynch would never confirm that. I think Mark Frost has. But I think that's the other thing is like you could easily read it as not that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the way this episode is made, it could either be a very specific like reference and call to that, or it could just be this more like global thing about the corruption of innocence or whatever. You know what I mean? But for our purposes, let's just say it's Sarah Palmer.
I mean, that would make sense to me, like based on the scene that comes beforehand. Except the problem is things get really fucking confusing because like the firemen and Senorita, who are essentially God, I guess.
White Lodge, I guess, and opposition to the Black Lodge.
The epitome of good in the world, I guess, kind of create and birth Laura Palmer's spirit of sorts.
Yeah.
And then they send it into the movie screen, which then goes to Earth.
This is all making sense.
But it doesn't show where it lands.
Right.
But it immediately transitions to an egg in the New Mexico desert, which then hatches a creature. And the creature has the front half of a locust and the back half of a toad, which, when I first saw it, I'm like, plagues of Egypt. Like, those are two of the plagues of Egypt. There's a clear metaphor. Then I read that David Lynch is just like, oh man, I just thought of it on a trip one time. I got out of a fucking bus and I got out of a fucking bus and there was these moths coming out of the ground and they reminded me of frogs. Like,
did you watch the video?
No.
That is in the video. David Lynch cooks quinoa. Easily searchable on YouTube. The first 5 minutes are him starting quinoa and explaining how you cook quinoa, and then he's just the next part he's just smoking his cigarette and telling that story, and he keeps saying, "Do we still have time for the quinoa? What's the time on the quinoa?" And he just keeps telling the story about locusts.
So it's like, I don't know if that's like a. So the best person I can compare David Lynch to is Jeff Mangum of Neutral Milk Hotel. Sure. Because they're both artists who are they're like the artists, right? Like David Lynch does things with film that I feel like no one else does because they're too scared or don't have the burning passion to do, which is what a lot of painters do with their art, which is they paint something very surrealistic and they're like, what does it mean, guy? And he's like, it's up to you to figure out what it means to you. I know what it means to me, and I needed to express myself that way, but what does it mean to you? And that's how David Lynch does film, I feel like. Whereas Mark Frost is kind of like, but we need to give him something for the network. Yeah. That's my read on it. So it's like, I don't know if David Lynch telling that story is like, I don't care about, like, it means what it means to you. To me, this was because of I don't know if, because to me, I don't know, that's too specific to an Old Testament reference that is like, but then I think, okay, since we transitioned right from the fireman, from the White Lodge, putting that in there to the egg, is the egg her essence? Like, yeah. And why would she be classified as like a plague type of thing? I mean, I guess you could look at it as like responsibility is a plague, like
pregnancy is a plague, right? Yeah, but I mean, I think, and it is interesting because after this episode is when we start to see the more like, because we see Sarah Palmer before this, but it kind of just feels like, oh shit, this is really fucking taking a toll on her. She's like having these outbursts like at the grocery store, but it's after this episode that we see her fucking remove her face and bite a man's neck off, and then just see some extra disturbing footage of her like with looping video of boxers and lions and her fucking destroying pictures of Laura. Like, it's really bizarre. But yeah, I think that like the idea that essence is possibly Laura, but possibly like also Judy, who's mentioned. Like, all of that, like I think that might be more what it is. I don't know.
Because I thought that was at least like the community's thoughts on it was like that Judy has possessed her, right? Is that ever even closely explicitly mentioned in the show that Judy could be inhabiting her in some way or form?
I mean, I think so. I think that the removal, like when she's at the bar and removes her face, I think that's pretty. I think that's maybe as explicit as it gets. Other than the stuff that happens after that, like we do see that it seems like she's kind of trapped in this never-ending thing. She keeps breaking the picture of Laura, but then it is like fixed, and she'll break it again. You know what I mean? Like, there's like that really weirdly edited scene. But yeah, I mean, I think that is pretty indicative that there is an entity that is fucking with Laura Palmer, much in the same way that there's an entity fucking with Leland Palmer.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing that this insinuates is that presence has been with Sarah for a long time, like even prior to the original
even like
series.
meeting Leland, probably.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, that's what's also confusing too, is that like that's why like I'm not sure like what to make sense of in part 8 as far as like, so you have this servant of the Black Lodge doing this mantra to, I assume is more specifically tailored to Sarah than to anyone else.
Yeah.
Unless your take earlier that you said like, it's a read on like it entering the world type of thing. But I got the gist of that it was like meant for specifically just for her, so that this bug could crawl in her mouth. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but like, that's why it's hard to like what is, because that would make it seem like the Black Lodge and Light Lodge like had to work together to achieve that, which wouldn't make any sense. Like, why would they be cooperating?
Which, like also though is kind of the interesting thing is like, to think of a thing we like were taught growing up, like good doesn't exist without evil. You know what I mean? They are like these forces that kind of define each other by their own existence in a weird way. And so like, I think that's such an interesting thing. And like, obviously like the nuclear imagery, I think goes a long way. And like, cause that's that's probably one of the most horrifying creations of recent history is that. And so, and also that is just a huge poster on Gordon Cole's wall in his office. It's just that nuclear explosion, which is like a guy needs to decorate it.
Well, I mean, like I was wondering this time too, because originally we had discussed about like, the symbolism of the nuclear explosion, what that represented in real world history and what that means as far as its direct relationship to the story with Bob and what Bob represents. This time I was wondering though, like, and not that I think one way or the other necessarily, because I'm just fucking lost. But like, I wonder if there's more of like maybe even a literal thing happening here where it's, because we learned how to split the fucking atom, that opened a tear in the universe to allow these forces to come in, as opposed to a like, this is representative of these forces, and like our discovery of the atom bomb was what brought evil. It's. I feel like there could be a possibility of things happening on a molecular level that caused some sort of lore based like opening somewhere to like allow these forces in type of thing. I don't know, which I mean, both of those could technically be one and the same theory, I guess. But
well, like it's interesting because stuff like that, whenever it comes down to kind of like literal, like thinking of Twin Peaks literally, thinking of it figuratively, I always think of the thing I think of the most is probably Garmin Bogia, which is like this creamed corn thing that is actually pain and sorrow, which is like fuel for the the Black Lodge entities. And like it's weird because it does exist on those multiple levels, and it's just such an absurd and weird world. And also maybe it's just how things are actually happening in heaven and hell, and David Lynch is the only one that knows. But I mean, I guess we've talked about this a lot. Do you have any?
No. I mean, we probably should have put like a spoiler warning before all of this. I mean, to the two people listening, like you probably should have done that. Now you got it ruined for you. I don't know if that conversation ruined anything.
I'm pretty sure by the time you get there, it'll be just as exciting. You've got a long road ahead before you get to that point, and there's going to be plenty of other things. Like, what the fuck is going on? So,
but I mean, just to echo earlier, it's a beautiful piece of work that can stand on its own, and I think Part 8 is just an amazing bit of television. And I mean, there are a lot of people like jerking off David Lynch in the reviews when it came out that like were like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened on television. I mean, sure, whatever. It's the most unique thing that's ever been on television.
It's one of the most interesting for sure.
I would definitely go out on a limb and say like the most unique episode of television, especially with that level of budget, like on a major. I mean, I don't know how you classify those networks, the like high level ones, but like it's something that is unlike anything you'll ever see. Unrelenting artistic vision of a guy who just they let him do what he wanted, and it's really fun to see that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk other David Lynch real quick. So what do you think? You're looking to get into David Lynch a little more.
Yeah.
What have you seen?
I haven't seen like anything. I mean, I could now all the names are escaping. I knew all of them, and now like Blue Velvet is one, correct? Is Blue Velvet like there's a couple that you have told me that are kind of considered not very favorably.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I definitely don't start with Inland Empire. Probably don't start with Wild at Heart. Or do, I don't know.
Wild at Heart is the one with Nicolas Cage and what I've seen of that, I'm not sure I want. Yeah, I don't want to start with that.
No, definitely not. It's fucking weird. There's stuff I love about it. There's some real disturbing shit in that one too, though. Like, but Blue Velvet, I think is great to jump into, especially if your only experience has been Twin Peaks, because thematically it's very close to Twin Peaks. And Kyle MacLachlan is the main character in it. Dennis Hopper gives a fucking tour de force performance of like just an insane person. It was like the first movie he'd made after getting out of rehab, and there's like this story of David Lynch like telling him like, yeah, you're doing drugs, you're a little crazy, and like they had him, I can't remember what the original thing they had him doing was, but Dennis Hopper was like, if I was like really a crazy person trying to get high, I'd probably have like a tank of nitrous oxide that I'd just huff around like through a medical mask. And David Lynch was like, you're the boss. That's the guy. He's just this insane man who huffs nitrous.
That's what I mean. I've watched some clips recently of David Lynch directing certain scenes from Twin Peaks. His directing style seems so like on the cuff and like just I guess off the cuff is the correct term. It's just like so. There's like not a lot of like a lot is left up to the actors to. I'm sure he does multiple takes and gives them some more coaching, but it's like it still seems like there's not a lot of specifics. It's like,
well, and I think a lot of the work that he does is done before the crew is there. You know what I mean? A lot of it is, I think, in a lot of ways, just conversations with the actors.
Gotcha.
Not even necessarily about the scene, but just about stuff, and him being like, "That's it," or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, which is really interesting. And I think that's kind of a thing of why actors probably love to work with him, is because he's so willing to just like discover shit in the moment. I mean, that's how Bob even came into existence.
Yeah.
Just seeing him on set and all of that. So, but yeah, Blue Velvet's a great place to start. If you want to see David Lynch's chops as like a much more traditional narrative director, Elephant Man is
I forgot about Elephant
amazing. Man. You could watch Dune. Probably don't.
I mean, I do want to watch Dune after I see Dune.
Oh, you're gonna wait till after, huh?
Because I haven't read Dune, so I don't know any of the story.
Okay.
So that I don't want it ruined by the shit pile that I've heard David Lynch's Dune is.
Man, it's an interesting movie. I would love to see what the 4-hour version that he initially submitted for that movie looked like. I don't know. I hope it was better. I don't know. But yeah, then the other one I would probably say that I enjoy the most and that I liked on my first viewing was Mulholland Drive, which was supposed to be was originally a TV pilot that was originally going to star Sherilyn Fenn reprising her role as Audrey Horne, where she has moved to L.A. And was going to be this thing.
L.A.
That kind of changed. Yeah. You gotta have the tacos in L.A. But yeah, that one's really great, and like I feel like it has a lot of the Lynchisms.
Was Billy Zane also going to be in it?
Oh God, I hope not. I really hope not. But yeah, those are probably the three that I'd say. Eraserhead is also really good.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That one is like extremely experimental. That's the one he made when he was at film school, where he like started on his first day. He's like, I have an idea for a movie, and they're like, okay, fuck it, make it. And 5 years later, he was like, well, here's the movie I made, and they're like, and then it just played in like midnight movie theaters until now. Like you can still just go to a theater in New York and like, well, probably not now, but you know. Anyways, but yeah, those are probably my recommendations. And then there's like, I mean, he hasn't made a shit ton of movies, so it's like pretty easy to get through canon and stuff. But okay, what else do we want to talk about?
So
go ahead.
for the rest of the episode, we're just going to talk about other things that are weird.
Yeah,
probably not spend as much time on them, but yeah. So once again, full spoilers for everything we do talk about. So if you hear some name come up and you don't want it spoiled for you,
skip ahead,
Justin.
Yeah, where do we want to start? I mean, I think a lot of these things that I want to talk about, a lot of the weird things I want to talk about, I would also recommend. You know what I mean? Like in a weird way.
Yeah. I think that's. So I'm pretty half and half on my mind. That are some are recommendations, some are not.
Okay. Well, why don't you start? What do you have?
Well, I kind of separated mine into categories.
Okay.
So I mean, do we want to start with movies?
Sure.
Let's start with movies. The first one is a recommendation, I guess. I want to talk about Holy Motors.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a movie called Holy Motors, which I should have done some more research before this. I meant to, and I didn't get around to it. So I can't even remember who directed it.
It's Leo Carax. I don't know if that. I'm sure that's not how you say his name. He's French.
Has he done anything else since?
I'm sure. I'll look that up while you.
Oh, I gotta find that. So Holy Motors is. Wow, where do you start with this shit? I think Holy Motors might be the weirdest movie I've ever seen.
Okay.
I've seen some pretty weird movies. It's a movie where it follows this guy who travels around like a magical limo and makes different stops. And it's hard. It's hard to tell if he's a paid actor or if he is just stumbling into the is omnipotent and knows where these situations are occurring. It seems like he might be an actor though.
Yeah.
And some people know he is and some people don't know he is. And he goes into these situations that are very, very unique and different. Like one of them's actually there's a couple musical numbers in this one.
I was going to say, I heartily recommend one of the musical numbers. Yeah. Like, I'm sure that's tons of people. And
he in between places, like he finishes one, then he'll jump back in the limo and he'll like do different makeup and make himself look completely different. Go to other ones. I don't think we ever learned his name. We don't know anything really about him, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's ever stated in the movie. It's been a while since I've seen it. I do just want to read the summary from IMDb after you've explained that. From dawn to dusk, a few hours in the shadowy life of a mystic man named Monsieur Oscar.
Oh.
So...
Well, apparently he's got a name, and where does this take place? It's not in France, is it?
I think it might be. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, he speaks French, I know.
Yeah, French.
But Eva Mendes is in this movie. Mm-hmm. That's like the most probably notable name.
Kylie Minogue is in this movie.
Oh, I totally forgot. Is she the other musical part?
I believe so. I can't.
It's been so long since I've seen this movie. But yeah, it is just completely bonkers. There's the scene with Eva Mendes. She's like a model at a photo shoot. He comes in dressed as a leprechaun. He's biting a lot of things.
Like he's just eating flowers.
Yeah, I think he kidnaps her, doesn't he?
Yeah, they go down the sewers.
Yeah.
You see his little leprechaun dick.
Yeah. It's very bizarre. And then
so weird.
We go through all these shenanigans, go through all these different things, and then there's just this weird, wonderful interlude where it fades to black. Oh, before that, I think it's before that, there's a motion capture sex scene that is between two snake people, and it's wow. It's a weird sequence because he's like running on a treadmill shooting a gun. He falls over. Snake lady comes in. Another woman in a motion capture suit comes in. Then it pans over to the screen to see it's crazy. And then after all these different scenes, and you're like, wow, there's no narrative structure happening here. It's just crazy vignettes, and it fades to black, fades back in, and you just see him playing an accordion in this church, and he's playing this song, and then all of a sudden on like this downbeat, a shit ton of people come in and are all playing the song with him. He's going around, and it's really cool. It's really great.
It's definitely one of my favorite scenes from that movie. I think I'm just such a sucker because like prior to that scene is just like this old timey movie footage of like these hands, and it's like intermission, and it's just this fucking rad musical number of him like playing this song in this church.
If you don't want to see the movie, I would highly recommend at least looking up this scene on YouTube. Just type in Holy Motors accordion scene, sure and you'll get something wonderful to watch. But then the movie continues on, gets really weird. There's a moment where he meets a woman in this like building, and they have like a legit like music from a musical like performance together where they're singing. The ending is just bizarre as shit. I'm pretty sure there's a chimpanzee at some point.
Yeah.
And they go, he's done with his job for the day, and the limo parks in the limo garage, and all the limos start talking to each other. It is crazy, and it's definitely one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is super bizarre. I'm trying to. We watched that when we were living together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year was that? Like 2013?
Probably. Yeah. I think that's about the time it came out. Probably like maybe a couple of years earlier than that. But yeah, it is wild. Yeah, I think a half recommendation for that is appropriate.
I mean, like, it's definitely a movie I'd recommend to certain people. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're really into film and you really like, I don't know if surrealism is the right term, but you like to see people experiment with film and storytelling in just weird, interesting ways, and you want to watch something bonkers. Yeah, definitely recommend it. If you're the type that isn't into exploring, feeling uncomfortable in movies, and you watch movies simply to deal with the stresses of life and distract you, then probably not. Yeah. But
yeah. I mean, it's not something that is going to pair well with like Fast and the Furious. No. It's not. That's not your one choice. Okay, I've got one to recommend as well. This is also a movie. It's from 1992. I recently saw this movie with a friend of the podcast and movie connoisseur Soren and Budge, who brought us Robot Jocks.
Gosh, I love Robot Jocks.
It's so good. It's a great episode. You should go listen to it. But he introduced me to a filmmaker named Guy Maddin. And Guy Maddin basically makes movies. He makes old-timey movies like the way that old-timey movies were made. So like 1920s and 30s, like the same filmmaking ways, and even like the presentation and like costuming, like all of that stuff. But we watched a movie called Careful, and I'm just going to read the synopsis for it real quick because it's another super weird one. But it's just, it's much longer than I thought it would be. In the alpine village of Tollesbad in the 1800s, the townsfolk talk quietly and restrain their movements lest they incur avalanches. There's a lot more, but I'm not going to talk about that. But that's like the setup for this movie, and it's a silent film. So there's like title cards with the dialogue. There's also tons of incest and other weird like sexual things. It's like this movie that's incredible in like how it recreates like all those filmmaking techniques and the feel of it, and then it's also just like very modern in like the stuff that it decides to portray and show, and like the themes. And so it's this weird, like you get this weird dissonance when you're watching it. But it's 100 minutes long, and it's a silent movie made in 1992. And it's insane. Like it's really weird. There's a girl who like is jealous of the attention that her dad gives to her sister, so she builds like this kitchen in a cave where she can take her dad to make him dinner and stuff. There's a guy who falls in love with his mom and then is eaten by the mountain, and then his brothers are like talking to his ghost. It's fucking insane. Wow. And weird. And it all starts with like this really great like puppet show thing that they like put on in the village to be like, don't talk too loud, because if you talk too loud, then an avalanche will destroy our village and it'll be all your fault. And
so don't gossip about all the shit you're about to see.
Yeah, exactly. But man, it is a fun movie, and he's made a shit ton of other movies that I like still want to dig into and discover. But Careful was one that I watched and I was like, I think I want to watch that again at some point. But yeah, that's my kind of recommendation. If you watch Holy Motors and you're like, fuck it, I'm already on this train, just get off at Careful on your next stop and see if it tickles your fancy. Yeah, what else?
Sounds interesting. I'll probably kind of cruise through some of these. I got a lot. So this is one we saw together. Swiss Army Man was pretty fucking weird.
Yeah.
Not as weird as some of the other. It's not as weird as Holy Motors, but it's weird because it's Daniel Radcliffe's best performance and he plays a dead corpse.
He's very good in it.
And yeah, I mean, I think we were both kind of disappointed by the movie. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about it now.
I enjoy it more now. I think I had a lot of like weird expectations going into it. But I enjoy it more now that I'm divorced from those expectations.
Gotcha. Yeah, and
where I'm at in life, I think, is like helped me. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't. I've only seen it the one time, and I just remember being frustrated by the potential of the movie and how much how often we went back to the well of masturbation. Little fires everywhere.
I mean, how often? Oh god.
But yeah, it's like there were so many places the conversations could go with these characters, and I felt like we were held back from some really great stuff we could have seen with the characters. But that's not why we're here to talk about these movies. It's the fact that it's fucking weird, and you will see some weird shit where I love Paul Dano, and just him trying to just deal with some things by dragging around this dead corpse, builds a bus.
Also, like, I mean, he's using that corpse to survive in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I mean, he uses its dead farts to propel him.
Oh yeah, it farts a lot.
Yeah, so
Daniel Radcliffe farts a lot in this movie.
Which is great.
And it's used for like survival purpose. Yeah.
It made me like, I do remember watching it and being like, I wish there was more farts in Harry Potter now that I've heard it.
But yeah, anyway, so that one's weird. I feel like on the I mean, going with the concept of surrealism being weird, anything by Shane Carruth, anything of the two movies that he's made.
Yeah.
But Upstream Color, I feel like, is probably the weirder of the two.
Yeah.
Because one is like time travel, and inherently time travel is a crazy mess. It's one of the best time travel movies ever made, Primer. It's not the highest budget thing. It sounds like garbage. The audio on it's not great. I think the
budget was literally like $7,500 or something.
Yeah, it's a really, really indie film, and it's amazing. It's an interesting, because time travel is a hard subject to tackle, and it does it in a very interesting way. But Upstream Color is the second movie, a little bit higher budget. Lots of symbolism, lots of worms coming out of pigs. And
that old film trope
by the evil audio man. It was the guy who did it was a metaphor for the guy who did his audio for Primer.
And it also a strange callback to 1998's Godzilla, where Matthew Broderick is also using to pull worms out of the ground.
I forgot that he uses the sound to like lure the worms out, and then he like puts them on like what are those called? I can't remember. They're like a turning spittle thing that he wraps the worms and pulls them out of these pigs. It's a movie that you have to put your thinking cap on, and it's much like David Lynch. It's like there's not really any answers out there per se. Yeah. Like you can definitely infer some things. Probably reading the book Walden will help, but definitely
a movie that like is banking on you feeling things. You know, paying more attention to kind of what you're feeling than what you know about what's going on in the movie, I guess. But yeah, that being said, there's some like I think that like the first act of that movie is like a fascinatingly weird like story, and kind of like a threatening feeling story.
Yeah.
that then kind of gives way to not being as interested in that as it is in like some much grander concepts. But
yeah, I think it definitely has like some commentaries on like individualism and some things about how culture affects that a little bit, and also just like some societal role things in there. It's very interesting, very weird. Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about
this. Is one that I would recommend, but also with the caveat of not certain people.
Yeah.
I actually like this movie a lot more now than the first time I saw it.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just it's a modern take on a Greek myth of is Agamemnon, who
kills the deer,
is hunting and kills one of Artemis's sacred deer. And Artemis has some revenge plans in the myth. So not to spoil anything if you don't know the myth or the movie.
I mean, the spoiler alert, like window is definitely closed on Greek mythology. So,
I honestly wasn't too familiar with that story, honestly, until this movie came out.
Yeah.
I'd heard it referenced, but never had actually heard or looked into it. So it's very dark, but also in a quirky kind of way. But the quirkiness doesn't come out as much as his previous film, The Lobster. Like it's...
Yeah, I never really laughed because I thought anything was funny. I laughed because I thought it was the only option.
Yeah. There's, oh my gosh, there's a few scenes in the hospital that are just really... And the first time seeing it, I was like, I don't know if this is intentionally funny or if this is like when he falls out of bed, like he's like, his sister's like looking at the window, he's like, I want to see, and then just eats shit super hard. And I laughed in the theater. I'm like, I don't know if I should be laughing at this because the tone of the movie is very ominous. Like it's like pervasive throughout the whole movie. It's very dark and it's like weighing on you. But then there's these real moments of levity. Another scene where he's like trying to get his son to convince him if he's lying or not, and he like tells him that story about jerking off his dad. It's like,
Yeah.
Oh man, it's bad. So yeah, that movie's fucking weird.
Yeah. I think I just remember watching that because I think it was the thing that got me to watch that movie was you finally coming over and actually watching that movie with me, and like
I needed someone to talk about it with.
Yeah. I liked it so much. I like it more than his other movies that I've seen, which I've only seen. I guess I've only seen Dogtooth and
The Lobster.
Yeah, but I think that this movie is so interesting. Like the thing that still strikes me about it is the dialogue in it, because so many of the conversations are incredibly mundane, like almost devoid of personality at points. And I don't know if I've ever seen dialogue used that way in a movie that also lends itself so perfectly to the themes and things going on in the movie. Like it's really interesting. Also, I've never seen ceilings just framed so prominently in shots. I'm like, no, you shouldn't do this. But it's great. I love it.
Yeah. That's all I got. You got any other movies?
I guess I've got an episode of TV that I really love that I want to talk about that is from the show Atlanta, which is Donald Glover's show where he plays a rap manager that's managing his cousin's rap career. But very little of the show is actually about him being a rap manager that's managing his cousin's rap career. But there's an episode in the second season called Teddy Perkins, which follows one of the characters. It's kind of a thing that's becoming very prevalent in TV is kind of having these episodes that are, for lack of a better term, side quests from the main, where it's just one character from the narrative that like you kind of see more of their lives. But this is basically one of the characters is going to this house to pick up, I believe it's a free piano that was like posted on Craigslist, but goes to this huge, old, very southern feeling mansion, and proceeds to interact with one of the most disturbing characters I've ever seen on TV, who is also played by Donald Glover in this full face prosthetic. But But it's like an incredible, it's like half an hour long, and it's this incredible thriller, but also this very weird commentary on the South and like America and identity, and it's really fascinating, and it's one of my favorite episodes of TV I've seen in a long time. It was something that made me think of part 8 of Twin Peaks, because it's such a departure from like what that show normally is, but also fits so perfectly into what that show is saying about a lot of that stuff.
I need to finish that show. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, and I enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah.
I've got so much to see. Like, so I just got Hulu at the time, so like,
oh, yeah.
and a bunch of other streaming.
So the world was yours.
Yes, so we all know. Yeah. So yeah, I was trying to watch a lot of things, and like it just fell into the. I don't know. I don't know expressions anymore.
Into the hole.
It just fell. It just. We just made one. I'm using it on this podcast. It just fell into the hole.
Jump into the hole. Fall into the hole. Yeah, no, I really enjoy that show. And it's one of those things, it's kind of an interesting thing because it feels like there's not really a schedule for it. Like, I don't know if there's any solid idea of when it's coming back yet that they've announced. But it's a real treat whenever something like that drops. And Donald Glover's great, and he's a great writer, great actor, pretty good rapper, I guess. Yeah, that's probably the only other like movie or TV thing I had to recommend, I think.
Sweet. Should we talk about video games?
Oh, please, let's talk about video games.
So, I mean, I guess I'll start with this before we descend into like the really weird shit. I mean, I love surrealism. Mm-hmm. That's like all I want to do. It's like
all I want to do is surrealism. Some melting clocks.
Yeah,
Sheryl Crow also surrealism. What the fuck is this podcast?
But yeah, I mean, so like that's when I have a choice of what I'm drawing and painting. That's what I do, and that's the type of movies I like. I like that stuff in music. I'm a sucker for it. And I remember the thing that really, like, of anything that sparked my interest in it was actually a video game. It was when I was, how old was I, 10? When did this come out? I can't remember when it came out. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Oh, okay.
Which is technically a direct sequel to the smash hit Ocarina of Time. And I say that jokingly, but that was like, that's considered the best video game ever made by a lot of people. So, whereas Ocarina of Time was a very, I mean, it had its dark moments and weird kind of moments. There's a very, H.R. Geiger-like creature at the bottom of a well in Ocarina of Time. But it's mostly like this is like a fantasy adventure. Let's go on this big adventure. Whereas Majora's Mask is the indie film of the Zelda franchise. Yeah. And it's like, let's make the world a lot smaller and a hell of a lot darker. And let's explore a lot of side stories with a lot of interesting characters who are just tragic as shit. And let's have Link put on these masks that transform him. And it's a painful transformation where he's just screaming every time he puts on a mask. God, yeah. And but there's a lot of surrealism throughout that whole game. But the moment that really struck me was towards the end, you're trying to stop the moon from crashing into the earth. And so you do the final confrontation, you get sucked up, whether literally or figuratively, I don't know, into the moon, where in the moon he like wakes up and it's like this like weird, serene, very beautiful grassy hill, and there's a tree at the top, and he goes up to the tree, and there's these children running around. All the children are wearing masks of all the bosses he's defeated throughout the game, and one of them is wearing Majora's Mask, and he goes and talks to him. He's this kid, but then he gets like the conversation turns a little sinister. But just that imagery of like those kids playing around these villains' masks under this tree was so striking to me at a young age that it stuck with me for a long time, and my love for surrealism really blossomed from there. So that's why, because of Zelda, I like Part 8 of Twin Peaks.
Makes sense. I mean, we know from like an article that I feel like it's reposted like 3 fucking months that Link's Awakening was heavily influenced by Twin Peaks. Like, Not in the way you want it to be. Sure, yeah. I'm pretty sure it's just from an interview where like, yeah, when I was making that game, I liked Twin Peaks.
That's pretty much it.
Confirmed. I guess I have a video game I want to talk about too. And I can't remember if you played this or not. I think you've maybe played a little bit of it. But a recent game, I believe it was 2016, which I'm remembering was a great fucking year for video games because I just started playing Rocket League again. I'm like, man, this came out in 2016. Fucking Overwatch came out in 2016. Hitman came out in 2016. Doom, which are both old games that also came out forever ago, but then were like reimagined. Anyways, but Nier Automata.
Oh, yeah.
Is a super weird game on like multiple levels because in some ways it's exactly what you expect a Japanese game to be, where you're basically a very hot woman running around in a pretty much maid's outfit with a fucking giant sword.
Giant ass samurai sword.
Yeah. But that game is like also it's like you're the woman you're playing is actually a robot. Which doesn't help well. I realized I was like, this will clear it up. But no. Basically, Earth has become unlivable, and humans now live in spaceships, and they have created these robots that basically they send to Earth to be like, yeah, let us know when we can go back there. But then there's all this other weird shit that has happened on Earth, and it's kind of created this...
Well, like, wait, hold on. Didn't, like, the robots, like, kick them out, essentially? Like, there's this artificial intelligence rose up, kicked them off Earth, and then they built robots on the moon or something, and were like, okay, these robots are meant to kill the other robots.
Yes, exactly. You're right. But then also it's unwittingly become basically just a repeat of, like, the creation story. You've got this, these robots who are on Earth who now have this mythology that they don't have any context or understanding for, and so it's like deconstructing this Christian mythology, but also just exploring this really bizarre existentialism that comes with being a robot created by, knowing your creators. It's fucking insane. And like, I just remember the first time I played that game, I was like, because it basically opens up with like a 10-minute thing where it's like, oh, this is like Gladius, which is a spaceship shooting game.
Yeah.
I guess
it's like a top-down twin-stick shooter type of thing.
And just anime cutscenes, I guess, will be in this. But it's crazy. It's you kind of get to the end of the game, and then it just restarts you playing as a different character. I guess that's a huge spoiler. I don't know if you got that far.
No, I beat the game.
Okay, good. Okay, I couldn't remember. But it's such a fascinating and wonderful game. The music is like really incredible and striking and grand. The way that the game plays, it's just this mishmash of like kind of character action. There's like these side-scrolling elements to it, and also, like I mentioned, these like top-down like space fighting game moments.
It's paced really well. It does mixes a lot of different styles.
Yeah. I remember like encountering the first, I actually can't remember if it's the first boss, but like the boss at the carnival.
Yeah.
The big, this robot who is just obsessed with becoming beautiful. You have this huge fight in this beautiful like opera house kind of thing. But it's really great. And it's like, there are some incredibly touching and like emotionally just raw moments with like I think about the stuff with Pascal, who's like a robot who has kind of become this leader of these other robots that just look like trash cans. Like that's what most of the other robots, no one made them into sexy robot samurais. They're just like trash cans with
the humans are like, we're gonna do it right this time. Last time we looked like trash and they overthrew us.
But yeah, it's a fascinating game. I really loved it, and it's not like I think aesthetically that's not a game that I would normally be drawn to. Yeah. Like if I had just seen exactly what I described, samurai made with giant sword, I would be interested, but not in the ways that I would normally
admit to the world.
Exactly.
Oh man,
yeah,
there's a lot of endings to this game, and some of them are fucking weird.
Yeah, one of them was like, "Oh, I ate a poisonous fish."
You can buy a fish from the merchant, and if you eat it, it literally kills you, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah.
And like, there's another one at the beginning when you play as the other character that if you just jump off this thing and go in another direction, it's like, where are you going? And it's like he just ran off, and those were his days were happy or something like that.
Yeah.
And like,
well, there's also because one of the mechanics is you are a robot, so you've got this. You basically got like your memory that you can use, and you can kind of swap chips in and out with that. But one of them is like your core system memory or whatever.
your core processor.
Processor, yeah. And if you remove that, you just die. Game's over. Which is also fucking wild.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I totally didn't even think about that, and that's definitely a weird game.
I've been thinking about going back. I kind of want to replay it again.
Because they're coming out with that remaster,
which
of the first one.
To see what that is like.
Yeah, because I heard they're very different games.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Well, going along with a game that has multiple playthroughs, I want to talk about Doki Doki Literature Club.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah. Speaking of anime.
Yeah, I guess all of our weird ones are anime. Once again, very much, I think more so in this case, a game I would not be drawn to unless someone had told me about it.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure you were the one who recommended this.
Oh yeah, I found out about it and I played it and I was like, holy shit, I need to tell everyone.
Yeah. Where did you hear about it originally?
I can't remember. I think it might have been a Kotaku article or some article somewhere was like, because it shows the picture, which it's a visual novel game, which once again, I am not into visual novels very much, particularly ones that are like, anime manga based. And, it's just this. The reason the article got me is because there's this picture of like these very, very anime girls in school uniforms who are like doing their cutesy poses, very pink and very colorful. And then the headline of the thing is like, "This is like the darkest game I've ever played." And I was like, "Oh, I'm intrigued." So yeah, I read the article and so I decided to play it. It is. It's not a super long game. I mean, the whole thing probably took me 8 hours, but it feels a bit longer especially the first half, because it just progresses like a very normal visual novel.
It's just basically you just making dialogue choices, which are presumably being like, "This girl likes you more now." Because of what you said.
Most. I mean,
it's basically stuff to train you for dating in real life.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, that is kind of the. What's the fucking word I want? The not the persona. The thing that what they're known for, what they're notorious for, is like being these kind of like dating sims. A lot of them are very explicit, and like, so I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And you pull up the title screen and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I playing? And but yeah, so you're this new kid. Are you new? I can't remember if you're new.
So,
and I mean, no, you have a lifelong friend. Sayori's like your lifelong friend. So your friend like takes you, and you're going to school, and she's convincing you to join this literature club after school. So you join it, and it's just filled with babes, and you are like trying to decide which one. They all want a piece of you, and you have to decide, well, which one am I going to date? And like at this point, you're like, what the fuck am I playing?
They're like writing poems for you, and you're being like, "This poem rocks.
Yeah.
This poem sucks."
Yeah.
Oh no.
And but then one character starts to act a little weird after a couple hours of this game, and then things start to get a little more depressing, and then things get really fucking dark.
Yeah.
And then the game ends, quote unquote, and then you go back to the title screen and you can see like a glitch happening. Like it leaves a lot for you to like do. Like you could have easily just quit out of it and leave it in a very dark spot. But then you like click one of the menu options because it's all glitched out, and if you notice, you click it and it starts you a new game. Things start to progress the same at first, but then some like glitches start happening, and like this game gets very meta and fourth wall breaking, and really dark, really interesting, in a really surreal, very different way than anything I've ever played that interacts with users and uses. It's one of those games that uses the art form of video games in the way that only video games can. And it's just, it's only available on PC, right? Because there's a sequence at the end that you would have to be on a PC to complete.
Yeah, you would not be able to do that on any other platform. Well, I guess you may. No, you couldn't. You absolutely couldn't. Because it's actually, I was thinking it was just save files, but it's something else. There's an actual
you have to, it's very interesting and very great. So if you had try Doki Doki Literature Club, because you will be embarrassed if anyone sees you playing it.
The cool thing about it too, this is a free game. It's still free, right?
I believe it's still free. Yeah,
I know it was when I played it, but yeah, and it also is maybe like a precursor to something else that you guys working on that. I think it's been pretty radio silent since.
Yeah, I wonder if it's still happening. He was supposed to be making another game that there's a lot of secrets buried in the files of this game that are hinting at some other grander, crazy thing. But yeah, those are the 2 video games I had. Do you have any others?
I do want to talk about one other video game series that I honestly don't know if you're familiar with, because I don't know if we've talked about it. I don't know why. But Frog Fractions.
I've never even heard of this. This sounds like a math game from when I was like 6.
Here's Frog Fractions rules. Frog Fractions is a Flash game that was made that will be defunct at some point, but luckily he's released the original game on Steam now. Also free, the first game. Frog Fractions is a Flash game where you start out playing as a frog on a lily pad, and you have to do things. You have to eat flies by answering like math problems that are on the flies. So it's like 8 + 3, and you type 11, and you'll eat the fly. And then it's like, okay, now you're going to type words, and so there's just words on the fly. So you're, and as you're going, you're like upgrading your frog. You're getting more abilities. But then it's like, it becomes very clear, like there are a couple abilities that it's like, you need 50,000 flies to buy this. And it's like, I would have to play this game for 15 hours or something to get that. But then there's just a moment where you realize, you get an upgrade that lets you fly. Your basically lily pad can move around the screen now, and you've got a tongue with static electricity that will pick up multiple flies. So you're like, just really reaping flies. But then you realize that you can actually go under water in this game, and at the bottom of this lake or river or wherever you're at is just all the money you could ever imagine that lets you buy upgrades that let you go to space. And now you're a frog flying through space, basically on a very Star Fox-esque feeling mission where other people are talking to you and heads are popping up with lines of dialogue. But you commit a war crime in space that then makes this frog go to like court where he has to defend himself and is like being accused of having weird pornography on his computer. But anyways, it's insane. And it was just one of these games that this guy made and just put online and didn't say anything about, and just let people kind of discover this fucking thing. Well, and then after that, there's like this huge groundswell that was like, can't wait for Frog Fractions 2. Like, what could that be? So then he was making this game that he was like, yeah, I'm working on Frog Fractions 2. And he designed this whole ARG that was around revealing what Frog Fractions 2 was. Turned into this huge thing where people were finding dead drops on the Golden Gate Bridge, sharing that with the online community, like finding, real things in real places, but then like also like there were big pieces of information that were conveyed by like, holy crap, Steam just said that this random game got an update at the exact date and time that is like referenced in hex code on this paper that we found in the park. And there's a game called Glitter Mitten Grove, which is a game where you play as fairy. It's like a management sim where you're building fairy houses and stuff like that. The thing about Glitter Mitten Grove is actually Frog Fractions 2, and that game is hidden inside of that. And
so you have to find Frog Fractions 2 in Glitter Mitten Grove?
So you have to play Glitter Mitten Grove to a certain point that other weird things start to happen, and then it just becomes Frog Fractions 2. So anyways, but there's also a Frog Fractions 3 that, like, again, this is all very spoilery, but like, I promise this is not taking away from the experience of playing the game. Like, a lot of this stuff is just being there when this stuff was revealed, but the games themselves are a fucking treat. So then when Flash is becoming defunct this year, like it is like at the end of the year, no more Flash on the internet or whatever. And so he was like, okay, I'm going to take Frog Fractions. I'm going to put it on Steam for free. And do you know what? I'm also going to put up, if you want to buy this premium hat DLC, which is just a hat that goes on your character, it's $8. You can play it. But it turns out that hat DLC is actually Frog Fractions 3.
Oh, gosh.
Just like... Anyways, go play Frog Fractions. Like I said, the first one is...
Are 2 and 3 just as good and memorable?
I have not played 3 yet.
Okay. Is that a recent development?
Yeah, that happened within the last 6 months or so.
Okay.
I did finally buy it because I downloaded Frog Fractions. I was like, I'm going to buy this fucking hat deal.
So Frog Fractions 2 is still not labeled as Frog Fractions 2. It's still Glittermitten Grove?
It's a game within... Yeah, you have to get Glittermitten Grove.
Okay.
And that will let you get Frog Fractions 2. But I'm pretty sure if you got that Itch.io bundle that was like the $5 thing, I don't know.
Oh, I did not know.
Okay.
It was way too many games. I was like, I'm going to lose track of everything.
I'm pretty sure Glittermitten Grove was in that though. So
okay.
if you have that. And I think when it originally came out it was like $20, but I don't think it's that much anymore. But yeah, they're wild games. I mean, if you play and enjoy Frog Fractions 1, I would definitely recommend moving on to 2 and then hopefully 3. I've heard great things about Frog Fractions 3. Which, like, the creator also isn't calling Frog Fractions 3. He's like, it's not really Frog Fractions 3. That's really Frog Fractions 4. Because, like, the ARG is kind of Frog Fractions 2. And Glittermitten Grove is, like, Frog Fractions 2 in Glittermitten Grove is kind of Frog Fractions 3. So, anyways, it's really great. Check out Frog Fractions. It's very good. And it'll, like, remind you about fractions for, like, 5 seconds. Which I hadn't thought about fractions in a very long time before I played that game. So... That's it for me.
All right.
Video games.
Sweet. Well, I don't really have any, but do you have any books?
I did. I was thinking about this. There are a couple I actually want to talk about really quick. The first one I recommended on the podcast last year around this time because it's around this time of year that I'm like, I need to read House of Leaves again. That's like a good fall book. House of Leaves is a really fascinating book that kind of does a lot of that fourth wall breaking and meta stuff where you're like reading a book that is about a book that is also part of a book that someone else has written. But House of Leaves is a very, very surreal and like, I guess it would kind of be horror, but not really. It feels very much... Control gave me a lot of similar vibes that House of Leaves felt. Like if I was just reading the text documents that you like pick up in Control that are talking about weird happenings. House of Leaves is about this house that is kind of different for everyone that goes inside and defies physics and all that kind of stuff. But that's a really great book. I'd also recommend... I've been thinking about this book a lot lately, is Universal Harvester by John Darnielle.
Oh, I still need to read it.
Which is... I don't think John Darnielle is the best writer. I don't think his books are my favorite, but I really think about him a lot. And it's a lot just because of the way that he kind of creates characters, I think, and the weird situations they get in. Like Universal Harvester, kind of the top level, I guess the broad concept of Universal Harvester is this kid who's like in his late teens who works at a video store in the Midwest and just over the course of a few months gets people returning these videos that they've rented. And like, this isn't what I rented. There's like some really weird shit on here. And like watching those, and it's just like a person like tied to just footage of a person tied to a chair in a barn for like 5 minutes, and that's it. And kind of like this whole thing where they're kind of piecing together what is going on, and I'm not going to spoil anything beyond that, but it's again kind of a good this time of year, like early fall feeling thing for me. Universal Harvester by John Darnielle. He also has I would also recommend his other book, Wolf and White Van. I think is really...
Yeah, I read Wolf and White Van.
Good. Yeah, what was your impression of Wolf and White Van?
Wolf and White Van felt very... it almost felt like a slice of life story, but for someone who had a really fucked up life.
Yeah. And also like I think that he writes a lot of all of his writing is kind of from the perspective of characters that you then, very like the use of unreliable narrators, I feel like is used, and if not unreliable, heavily biased narrators, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating. Like, I was a little bummed out because I was hoping there would be some sort of like motivation reveal at the end, when it was just kind of like, and that's just how it was. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just here to feel shitty. Just like, okay, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, huge fan of his band. So like, it feels like kind of a lot of the subject matter feels, and the way he describes subject matter feels very much like the lyrics of his music, which is great. And yeah, I don't know. It's if you want to know, his band is the Mountain Goats, and I think their top stream song on Spotify is "No Children." So you go listen to that, and that will give you a good sense of. It's
funny, like when I first got into Mountain Goats, I'm like, that's weird because that song's really weird. And then you listen to more Mountain Goats, and you're like, yeah, no, that's probably like the most, that's like top level of like Mountain Goats you can get.
Yeah, it's
that and probably best ever death metal, or the death metal band from Denton.
Yeah, best ever death metal band out of Denton is. Yeah, wow. That man's got a lot of songs, and a lot of them are recorded on garbage equipment.
Yeah.
But some of them are recorded on really good equipment, and they're really good. But yeah, I guess transitioning into music.
Yeah.
Which I got a lot. Cool. This is the one I probably got the most for. I don't want to spend too long on this because I'm not a huge connoisseur of this band, but I feel like we can't talk about weird bands and weird music without talking about D. Antwoord.
They are the answer.
They don't make any fucking sense to me because they are very popular, question mark. Yeah. I guess in South Africa they're probably a lot bigger than.
I know their names. Yeah. I know Yolandi and Ninja.
Yeah.
Which is funny because some asshole kind of stole Ninja's thunder by playing Fortnite real good.
Piece of shit.
That sucks.
Yeah, they're a South African rap duo.
Sure.
At least he raps.
Yeah.
She sounds like a Teletubby, and says
the way I said like insinuated I was really into it, which I am, but only appropriately. Not.
Their music video has like a lot of big name celebrities in it. I don't know if that's just connections or that those people actually listen to them.
Yeah.
And they've got some interesting music videos. They're very weird. Their music videos are very bizarre and uncomfortable
and gross. Like, I feel
some
like
of them are gross.
And that's not like I don't think that that's a negative thing. I think that's very intentional. But like, they're fucking gross. Like, it's just
very, very bizarre band, both in sound and their visual persona and aspect of them. So, if you haven't heard of them and you want to explore weird music, check out D. Antwoord.
Yeah. I Think You Freaky. That's a good one.
Gosh. Oh man. Oh yeah, and then you just got that great video of him talking about the time he played basketball with Drake. And
that's one of my favorite D. Antwoord things. Yeah, that might be like the first recommendation. Go check out. That's a Vice video, I think.
I think so. Yeah, that's amazing.
There's an animation of his ball sack hitting Kanye West in the face.
Oh yeah, I forgot Kanye is a huge part of that. And he's eating banana pudding made by Kim Kardashian.
That's great.
Gosh. Oh, okay. You got a weird band?
I think I did. Oh, this is just an album that I really love that's kind of bizarre and kind of, I guess not as much now. This artist has done some other weirder stuff, but The Age of Odds by Sufjan Stevens, who is no stranger to the concept album. He wrote an album about fucking Illinois, and then I guess it was Michigan and then Illinois. But he did an album. He's primarily kind of like, prior to this album, very much like kind of a alt folk kind of indie guy. But he did an album called The Age of Odds, which was based on songs that he wrote, kind of inspired by these drawings and prophecies from, I can't remember his name, but like a homeless guy in New York that would do these weird drawings and was talking about when the aliens came down and all this. But it's like this really bizarre, I guess for Sufjan Stevens, like electronica album that ends with like this 20-minute song that just turns into this very like bubblegummy pop electronica thing that's really great. But a lot of it's just him playing with just weird electronic noises and employing like 12 different people singing in chorus and stuff like that. That's really cool. But that's kind of like a weird thing that once I listen to it like 3 or 4 times, I'm like, this isn't really weird to me anymore. I just really like it. So, I don't know, check it out. Especially if you have never listened to Van Stevens before. It's just worth a shot to see something a little different.
I actually haven't listened to that one at all. I've heard Sufjan Stevens' other stuff, but I've not heard that, so I will definitely.
It's good. He also released the most recent album he released. Actually, is pretty kind of in that same vein. A little less. I think it's a little less like bold and weird, but a lot of similar stuff. So,
I got one I definitely really want to talk about. I mean, I'm sure I have more. When I was trying to think, it's always when I'm trying to think of these things, I can't think of them. I have heard so many fucking weird bands that I just couldn't think of for some reason. But I think there's a few that I just want to go over that, like, some of them, once again, like D-Word, I'm not super into, but I just know that they're fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge among, like, music enthusiasts at this point, but, like, and you're either on that train or you're not. But Death Grips, man.
I knew that's where we were going.
Death Grips and Trap is just, like, I'm not one who subscribes to that, like... I don't like mixing that's intentionally shitty. Like production that's intentionally shitty for the whole album, get the fuck out of here. If it physically hurts me to listen to, it's not good. That's my hot take on Trap, I guess. Then we've got Juju. Juju's really fucking weird.
Yeah.
I'm not super into Juju, but they do have this killer cover of ZZ Top's Sharp Dressed Man.
It's on the AV Undercover, right?
Yeah, they also have a record version that's not as good. I think the AV Undercover live version is better. And I love it. I fucking love that cover.
They also have an entire album of Twin Peaks covers.
They do.
Yeah, have you not listened?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Juju plays Twin Peaks, I'm pretty sure is what it's called.
Like, are they the covers of, like, Badalamenti stuff, or are they covers of the Roadhouse stuff?
No, it's mostly Badalamenti stuff, because I'm pretty sure it was released prior to the return. Maybe that's not true. I don't remember, but...
Does it have You and I on there?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember. I just remember, like, they're covers in the loosest sense of the word.
Okay.
Like, some of them feel like, if I was going to write a song that felt like this, you know what I mean? But there's definitely, like, it feels very Twin Peaksy for sure.
He just has a very interesting way of singing. It's a very strong choice and I always wonder about bands like that. I'm like, you're really putting all the marbles in at that point when you choose to sing fucking weird. Yeah. Like, that's not your natural singing voice. Like, and he does it, and some people apparently really love it. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I wouldn't knock it like I would to fucking trap music. And,
oh man, yeah, unfortunately no You and I cover.
Fuck. Another band we've talked about relentlessly on this podcast is Ghost. And definitely a weird band. Like, you look at my experience with them is seeing their cover art and be like, whoa, this band is hard as shit. And then listen to it and hearing the most like 80s sounding butt rock I've ever heard, and I loved it.
So good.
And then learning like what this music was about, and there's a huge narrative backstory and persona to this band, where they're essentially in this alternate universe where it's the Catholic Church of Satan, where they worship Satan, and he's like the Pope, and I mean, it's more complex than that, but like, long story short, he's the Pope worshiping Satan, and it's great. And I honestly, like, I think this might be, from what I've gathered, it's kind of pretty split on the fan base. I think Prequel is my favorite album of theirs.
Right, yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't like it from the Ghost community.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. I feel like the Ghost community is one of those where it's like, it started out as like just metalheads, like people who liked metal, and especially old metal, which like Opus Eponymous, like their first album does feel like a Black Sabbath album, like an early Black Sabbath album in a lot of ways. And so I think people that are like, I'm here for the music, are like, that's just like mainstream bullshit. But like, if you got into Ghost and then you like watched any live videos or watched any of their like little vignettes that they've made that like tell the story a little bit, like, and you're there for the theatrics, like, yeah, I think Prequel is like I think it's pretty beloved among those fans.
I mean, but yeah, I don't know how you can like think that, because like you show that to anyone that likes quote unquote mainstream stuff and they bounce off hard.
Yeah, it's
like
true. It's true.
So yeah, I mean, I get that that's like where their opinion is, but it's like I don't think that is true.
Yeah,
but I also get like,
well, it's like it's the death metal.
Yeah, I also get like if that's what you like about that band, why you wouldn't like that the newer stuff they're putting out, which Judge Judy meme. With pointing at the watch, and I need that next album, guys.
Oh man, but those the 7 inches of Satanic Panic that they put out, which were just like if Ghost existed in the 60s, are pretty fucking incredible.
I could use another 8 songs from 7 inches of Satanic Panic.
Make it the 40s.
What is happening?
I just want to hear some big band Ghost.
The other quick mention I want to give is to a band called Hella. And Hella is a math rock band. Ooh, I mean, I just did mention that Trap sucks because it hurts your body. So maybe I should be a little more lenient on it, because like I don't listen to Hella a lot. Occasionally I'll be like, man, I just need something mind melting where the only appropriate dance move is a seizure. And
as we all do at some point, yeah.
What you need to do. Oh, I should have had this ready. I'm so sorry. So they're a math rock band, and math rock in general is pretty weird. These guys, I would like to say they play speed math rock. Much like speed metal, only speed math rock. Go on Spotify, and their song Biblical Violence will get you gyrating, I guess, is the best. Like, it's very polarizing. It is so, the drumming in it is, it's just a guitar and a drummer. Mm-hmm. There's no vocals, and it's just mind-numbing. It's just, the drumming hurts to think how it's happening, and yeah, that's all I got to say. I'd be like, please check it out, and if you hate it, at least you experienced it.
Sure.
But okay, now the one band I really want to get into is one I discovered recently, and I don't know how to talk about this band. It's maybe I'm late to the party. Maybe like everyone already knows it. It's called Vernon Jane. I believe it's a singular artist who just has a band. I don't know though. I haven't done any research into it because I discovered it pretty recently. Vernon Jane. Whew, oh boy. How do I best describe this? Well, the only full length album they've released is titled The Ritual of Lovemaking.
Oh.
And
so this is for special times.
Well, we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
The cover art is it's an orange in bondage. It's like a fruit.
Okay.
And there's like a rope around it. It's disgusting. Their top played song is called Fuck Me. And so yeah, it's okay. I'm going to try and describe what this sounds like.
Okay.
Someone who listened to a lot of Billie Holiday growing up.
Oh, I love him.
And then God damn it.
It's a clueless reference. Stupid.
Yeah, listened to a lot of Billie Holiday growing up, and then discovered Nine Inch Nails.
Okay.
And but then decided to play in like a big band jazz ska, but heavily influenced, but then also occasionally dips into like some old Red Hot Chili Peppers style. Yeah, no, it's all over the place. Like there's different songs that are.
I'm just accidentally playing it. I'm so sorry.
And yeah, like I'm just gonna take you through some of the titles on this. So some of the track listing for The Ritual of Lovemaking: Daddy Issues, The Drugs You Do, Last Good Fuck, Weapon Between Her Legs, and Fuck Her. And it is unrelenting. I've used unrelentingly so much on this podcast already. I'm going to pick a different word. It is very heavily violently sexual. Like it's uncomfortable. It's not. Yeah, it's not like something you would play. Well, if you did play this to get the mood on, I'd be very worried. It's very aggressive. Like there's some elements of Rage Against the Machine in there too, in her vocal performance too. It's the music. The like musical part of it is incredible. It's so unlike anything I've heard before. There's like a horn section, but it's also very aggressive guitar sometimes. But then it gets into like some swing jazz. It's musically very mature. Like it knows how it knows its way around the music, I guess is the best way to describe it. Like it knows what it's doing and it does it very, very well. And it's very engaging. But then you listen to these lyrics and the vocal performance is impressive too. It also walks a fine line of knowing she's a really talented singer, but also lets that emotion break through to make something that's not necessarily technically great, but emotionally very delivered well. But the lyrics are so immature and unhealthy and all about sex. Like it's like 80% just about sex and like bitterness towards it for the most part.
The ritual of love.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. The ritual of love. Yeah. So I don't know if that's I don't think it is, but I could be misreading it and that it's a conscious choice to have that kind of juxtaposition of like this maturity mixed with this very immature lyrical theme. Sure. I don't know. Is that
their only full album?
I think so. Okay. Yeah. And then a lot of like other singles. There's an EP that was like their first bit, and the EP is a little more tame. Okay. It feels like both how aggressive it is musically and how explicit it is, though it still is about like sex and stuff. It kind of feels like I'm going to put some feelers out to see what the people can handle. Yeah. And then the ritual of lovemaking. Well, then a couple singles like "Fuck Me" is a uncomfortable song, and it's a trip. I definitely recommend it though to people who want to explore like different music and are okay with that subject matter and being willing to be uncomfortable exploring that subject matter in a way that is not positive, I guess. I don't know. Some songs, some songs are like meant to be like a positive empowerment thing with sex, but they still feel very like gross. And I'm a pretty open-minded person when it comes to like sex and stuff. So it's like, it's not that I'm like, oh my gosh, you're talking about sex in this way. It just feels, I don't know.
Interesting.
It feels intense, but I can't not listen to it. It's got me hooked for the past couple of days and I haven't been able to stop. But the whole time I'm still like, what the fuck? Like, I feel like embarrassed because of how immature it is. But at the same time, it's so cool that, yeah, anyway, I've ranted too long about it. But yeah, Vernon Jane, really fucking bizarre.
Cool.
You got any more bands?
I honestly don't think I do. A lot of the stuff I'm listening to right now, not super weird. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Idols and Sufjan Stevens this week. So.
Oh, new Idols that they just came out with? Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, it is good. And new Fleet Foxes album. Not weird, just good. It's fine. I guess this is a musical thing. You've listened to Mouth Noises, right? Have you heard that? There's a guy named Neil Ciceriega. His stuff is a little hard to find because basically it's just him taking two songs that should never be put together and mashing them up, like Chop Suey and All Star by Smash Mouth, or like, but they work musically like in a way that's like.
Is there a lot of stuff on YouTube?
Yeah, there's.
Okay, maybe I have because
it gets taken down pretty quickly too. Yeah. I'm pretty sure there's still a way that you can like buy some of that stuff. But I don't have a ton of like specific recommendations with that. Just like check out his Mouth Noises albums. I think he's done a bunch of other stuff too that's probably equally weird. But the way that he basically, it's not like him, like a lot of mashups you hear are like, okay, these songs are in the same key and have the same tempo, so we can just fucking throw them together. Which there are great things like that. Like I showed you the Death Cab and Kanye West mashups.
I don't know if I've heard that one.
Those are really good too. I'll have to share those with you. Those are, you're unable to find those anywhere.
Yeah. Have you heard the Grey album?
Yeah, the Grey album is a good example of something like that. Yeah.
Who did the Grey album? Who mixed that?
Danger Mouse.
Okay.
Yeah. who then went on to mix like the next 5 Black Keys albums and stuff, which is bizarre. But yeah,
so he's to blame. You're saying
he is to blame. Yes. I think it was, it's funny. Pretty much from Attack and Release on, I think it's Danger Mouse. So there's some good stuff in there, but yeah. But anyways, instead of that, it's more like, what are 2 songs that should never go together? And I'm going to just fucking like distort and elongate phrasing from lyrics to like force it into this new skin. And he just creates some real atrocities. And it's one of those things where it really is like, you realize how much a lot of this popular music is just in your bones, because immediately when something is just a little bit off, you're like, oh fuck. But then 12 seconds later, he's just completely ripped it apart, and it feels like he's doing damage to you mentally.
I'm pretty sure, okay, unless someone else is copying him, I've definitely seen a couple of these on YouTube. And I can specifically what you're talking about. I can just hear Kurt Cobain's drawn out voice that sounds so wrong.
So that's something to check out. That's pretty fun. I think that's kind of all I have for music. Other than Orville Peck, which again, not really weird, but also kind of weird.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I've definitely listened to that a lot.
Do you have anything else?
That's it. I think that's all the weird I got, and we've probably gone way too long. But
yeah, probably. Do you want to do recommendations this week? Do you have anything?
I think Vernon Jane was all I would have anyway, because I haven't had time for anything.
Okay. Well, let's just do. We don't even break for recommendations.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't have a ton, but I do want to talk about. I finally started season 2 of The Boys.
Wait, so you've watched the first season then? I didn't know you watched the first season.
Yeah, I watched it a while ago.
How did you feel about it? I don't think I ever got your take on it.
I fucking love it. Yeah, I don't know why we didn't talk about it. I think
was I gone on one of those weeks or something?
It might have been. I don't know. I don't know if I ever talked about it on the podcast, honestly. I think that you and Mitchell had talked so much about it when it initially came out that I was like, I don't have too much to add. But yeah, I fucking love The Boys. I didn't think I would. I really didn't think I would. But season 2 is just picking up kind of right where the last one, not right where I left off, but like just really throwing some new stuff in there and doing really interesting stuff with characters. I actually watched it with other people who've been on the podcast, because all my friends have been on the podcast at this point. If you weren't on the podcast, I'm sorry. Guess we're not friends. But no, that's not true. Dave. I don't know. I didn't think I had a friend named Dave. Anyways, Jules and Zach, I went over there and we watched a couple episodes of The Boys, and just talking about it, it's such a tightly paced show. It's literally every scene is delivering new information that is relevant to the story or to a character's journey in an interesting way. I think all the performances are great. I think that, I love it. It really makes me want to dig into the source material, honestly, because it's the show feels like such a, heads up and aware, like, parody and criticism of superhero culture and all of that, but it also just serves as an even bigger metaphor for like jingoism in America and like the military industrial complex, like all that stuff that is kind of, I think, become just the 4 or 5 tools that thematically, when you're writing a prestige show at this point, you're like, here they are. I mean, we gotta use these, but it doesn't feel bad. Like it feels like it's constantly treading new ground, and doing interesting stuff. And there's always moments that I do not anticipate at all. So I like it a lot. I'm really excited. I'm bummed because I wanted to wait until all 8 of the new episodes were out, and I think there's.
Is this season only going to be 8?
Yeah, I think so. That might not be true, but I think it's.
I'm going to start watching it when all come out. I didn't watch this week's Raised by Wolves. I need to do that.
Oh yeah. I'm a little behind on Raised by Wolves now too, but yeah, fucking The Boys is really good. I'm really really enjoying it. So yeah, I guess that's it for us.
Sweet.
Do you want to reach out to us and tell us that the weird stuff we talked about isn't that weird? Want to out yourself as a weirdo? Just kidding. You can email us at rewatchers.
Listenthepod.com at gmail.com.
Yep, or on Instagram or Twitter.
Rewatcherspod.
Right.
I don't know those actually, so I couldn't.
It's funny because you were the only one who was actually saying them. I think I was just mumbling into the mic. So, no one gives a fuck. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, this is like even more incredible than if you made it.
If you listen to both the Last of Us podcast and this podcast, you get both merit badges.
Yeah. And I think that makes you a honorary
member of this podcast.
Yep, and my new best friend. Oh man, what a terrible idea. But yeah.
On 3, this has been Tyler Oh, shit. Can we say that this has been Tyler McKinley? It's just been me.
It's been Tyler McKinley. I'm Tyler McKinley's tulpa version of Tyler Harris that lives in his basement and makes sure no one steals these microphones.
I think that's where we're going to cut it.